ThatPaulGuy, and today we're going to work on the VideoCardless build that we were talking about in the previous video. I got my NZ XT case. It's a H500. It's a mid-tower case. As you can tell, I've already got a couple things put into it. I've got the power supply already mounted. This particular power supply does have cables. As I upgrade to another power supply, say after I put a high power video card or anything like that in it, I'll probably upgrade it to modular cables, which means I'll be able to put whatever cables I want in there instead of being at the mercy of the power supply as it comes out of the box. There's a slot for SSDs. I've already put the SSD in here, although it's not connected yet. The good thing about this case is it does have the little, not really a breakaway, but it's a little snap bracket that they'll go right in. Pretty convenient there. So the other side of this case is where the acrylic side will be. So you'll be able to see the motherboard and everything through the acrylic on this side. This will be the plain white side. It also hides the cable management. There's Velcro here to help, little tracks there so the cables will go in. The motherboard, we talked about that before, the Asus Prime X470 Pro motherboard. It's got two M.2 slots. We won't be using those now, but we'll be using those in the future. The reason why I'm not going to be using it right now is because I'm going to be using a regular SSD. It's a 500. It's an Evo 860 from Samsung, and it's 500 gigs, so that ought to be plenty for what we're doing. I've already got the memory installed in here. Got some Patriot Viper memory. I believe it was clocked at 2666, which is more than enough for right now. It's a 16 gig, and I've got it in slot number 1, believe it or not. My CPU, we're doing a Ryzen 5. It's a 2400G, which means it has the integrated graphics on it. So your graphics and your CPU are on this one die, believe it or not. It's the same size as the other chips. And still, I mean, fully functioning 4-core, 8-thread. When you go to pull it out of the box, you can't really tell, but there's a little gold arrow here. That tells you where pin number 1 is. It's on the front and the back, so just in case you might be, I'll pick that up in a second. Just in case you might be, I don't know, putting it in from here, trying to get into your, I don't know. But it's labeled, it's actually marked on both sides. And it'll correspond to number 1 pin on your CPU, on your motherboard, so you won't have any cross-threading or tearing up any pins or anything like that. So that's where that's going to go. Then as we pull the fan out, we have to be careful pulling the fan out. This does already have the cooling solution in the box with it. AMD does a pretty good job about doing that. They don't want you to have to go out and spend more money on something. And that's another thing that also makes it pretty good value. But this coming out of the box does already have a thermal compound on the back of it. So I don't have to put, usually you put maybe a pea-size little section or a pea-size drop of some kind of thermal paste and let that spread out as you push the CPU and the fan together. You don't have to do it on this one, but we do have to be careful because it is already on the back and I don't want to put my thumbprints or fingerprints or anything like that on it. So we're going to get started on this build. So got the CPU here, take it out. Normally I'd be wearing a static strap of some type. I don't have a workbench set up yet. I'm trying to be very careful. Most components now are pretty resilient. They're not going to fail too easily with just static shock. But always take precautions. Always try to be careful. You don't want to do anything that's going to do something unnecessarily. If you're in a dry climate, not a lot of humidity or anything like that, and you notice yourself, especially if you're rubbing your feet on the carpet or something, there's a lot of static. Take some precautions, especially. So you want to be really, really careful. Don't tear up your equipment. We're going to drop our CPU in. There's a little handle here. This actually compresses the pins and holds them into place. So that should drop in very, very easily. If it doesn't drop in easily, you've done something wrong. Pick it up and try it again. It should just drop right into place without a problem at all. You should see just right like that. Close that down on there. Very carefully start to lift it up. Make sure that you've got it centered or you got it locked in there. So everything looks good so far. You'll notice that on the back plate here, we're going to keep this back plate, but these two plastic pieces have to come off because we're going to put our cooling solution on there and it's going to take the place of this. They won't both fit together. This is made more for a generic type fan and we're going to be using the fan that obviously came with the CPU. So we're going to go ahead and take these off and keep track of the screws and also keep track of the bracket that's on the back. We won't need these screws again because that cooler does come with screws, but just to be on the safe side, you never know. Keep those in a little tray right there. can kind of hear on the back of that where that bracket came loose. Same here. Just for the sake of keeping everything together, I'm just going to put that right there like that. Alright, then we're going to put our bracket on. We're going to put our fan on, excuse me. Now, there's no real rule whether you have, front or back or whatever, facing one way or the other. But you will notice that the screws line up in only one configuration. So you do want to go ahead and match that up. Now, it might depend. There's a little tab on here that says AMD. You might or might not have enough room depending on how much memory you've got in there. With me, it doesn't really matter. I can put it in either way. But I do want to make sure that I put it where the cord that comes for the fans will fit right on the fan header. And there is one for CPU, so we're going to take advantage of that. That bracket is still on there. So I can start tightening her down. Alright, so I turned it around to show you that in this particular case, I've already got the standoffs there at the right spot. But there are several different sets of holes in here, and you might just have to check and maybe follow the user's manual for the case that you have. But most of the time they're going to line up, and they'll be marked. There's some primary ones. The standoffs are already in here for this particular motherboard. Most motherboards of this size, the regular standard ATX size, will be the same spacing. So a lot of times those standoffs can stay right where they are. They don't have to go anywhere. So I'll be all set there. I'll just go ahead and put my motherboard in, and you got to make sure that you're doing sort of a cross pattern. You don't want to tighten it down in one spot before another one. This also is where your I/O shield is going to come in, and you'll be able to hold this right on the back. It should snap in to this hole right here that I got my fingers through. From this side, so it's coming in from this side, it'll hold everything. They just call that an I/O shield. It's an input-output shield. Provides a little bit of extra of signal blockage, so when the case is closed up, you don't really have any kind of signal interference. It should help out quite a bit, but you're always going to need that cosmetic as well as anything else. So we'll get to putting it in. Okay, so I've got the motherboard in here, got everything going. I've already started doing a little bit of routing with the thin wires and all that stuff. They'll come through the back here. We'll tie everything up. I'll start getting some things connected with the power supply, and with these cables here that will actually go to the front panel. And I'm not going to bore you with all those details, but we'll come back in just a little bit and we'll see if we can get it to fire up. So, as I finish this up, I'm going to have to say it's probably one of the cleanest cable management jobs I've been able to do in a case. Everything has its own spot or own place back here in the back. It travels really well across the back. There's spaces for the cables to go. There's tracks for them. There's openings above and below the motherboard, as long as the side right here. So when I turn it around, except for just trying to make sure there's a loop in there that keeps the stress off, you almost can't see any cables at all. So, and for the power supply having brightly colored cables, it does a pretty good job of even being able to hide those. So I got to give a kind of a tip of the hat, because normally I don't worry so much about cable management. I try to make it look decent, but I mean, if it doesn't look great, it doesn't look great. But for those of you that might know Jay's 2 cents, he's a content creator, has a very, very strong following, and very, very particular about cable management. So not only does the machine have to work, it has to look good. So I've kind of taken that cue from him, and I appreciate it, and a nod, and hats off to him. But I also saw him do a build with a H500 case, and his looked pretty good too. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I'm very, very happy with the case, the way all the cables hide. So I think I'm going to call it a night for now. This thing is all put together. Tomorrow we'll go ahead and put power to it. I'll have to format the hard drive because there's nothing on it right now. But we'll get an operating system installed on it. We'll get it brought up, and we'll make sure everything comes up and everything's good. As you can tell, no video card right now. All the video processing is done on the CPU behind the fan here. So All my fans do freely turn. Everything looks good. I should be in good shape, and we'll see tomorrow how it works out. Okay, so I meant to do this earlier, but I didn't get around to it because I had to kind of do some troubleshooting. It's a couple days later, and I had to go back through and exercise a little bit of patience. And that's the biggest thing when you're doing a computer build is patience. It's not speed, it's not how good it looks. It's just taking your time and making sure that everything is going right. I've gone back through because I couldn't get it to post. And as you might recall, that was one of the things I wanted to try to get it to do was actually get everything to turn on and actually show up. And I should get a BIOS screen on the monitor here. So I've gotten everything plugged back in. I took the cables and I went ahead and I made sure that everything was plugged in right. I made sure everything was secure, the memory's in the right slot, all that good stuff. And so we're going to give it another shot. So fingers crossed, here we go. Alright, so far it's doing the same thing it was doing before, but that is different. So I do have, I don't know if you can see it, I've got an RGB light that's showing up now. So, and I do have some good stuff on the front here. So it is posting now. And we're into the BIOS. So you can see, I don't know how well you can see this, but I've got 3 fans that are running. It's getting the speed of all 3 of those fans. CPU fan, 2 case fans. It is reading my Ryzen 2400G. That's awesome with Vega graphics. That is awesome. The speed it's at, the memory. So far that looks really, really good. So I'm going to play around with it a little bit more. I do have to still install Windows or some kind of operating system on this drive, the hard drive. But as you can tell, the BIOS has come up. She's going, I mean, the biggest thing is, like I said, patience. Make sure that everything is plugged in, everything is secure, everything is tight, and take your time doing it. So that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video. I'll probably do a few benchmarks and all this stuff after I get an operating system and a couple of games downloaded from Steam and get that going right. But this is a very, very good sign, and that's the best first sign you can have is the BIOS coming up and you can see what's going on. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and cut this video loose, and as always, folks, hit that red subscribe bar, thumbs up, thumbs down. Any comments you might have, any questions, I'll try to post an updated video to this build once I get everything back together and put together. And like I said, one of the things I really, really did like about this case was it's very, very clean inside and very clean on the outside, on the back side of it too. So I'm going to put everything back together, get it going right, and that's going to be it for now. And until then, I'll see you later.